one of the interesting part with the election process is when you run for the position, you are not actually just the candidate. So now you have a primary that you have to go through, which is in September 2024, right? So, and I believe we already know that Sarah McBride is running. We have you, and now actually just a new person, Alexander Keys, is it? He actually, I just saw that, actually I didn't know, and then Sean just let me know that he actually apparently announced his candidacy. And I think maybe one more person publicly showed interest, Eugene Young. So let's say we have 4 Democrats running. So like, why I find this interesting, I guess, is because, so you guys are all Democrats, right? So, but you have to win. So you are going to kind of go against each other. Well, you have to. But then if you win or you lose, but let's say if someone loses, it's a little bit worse, but you still have to work with that person after the primary. That's kind of like, it's a fine line what you can actually probably do during the primary process. I mean, you can't really go too far out, but you really have to be still strong. So what actually differentiates you? Now we know Sarah is openly there, and then let's say Alexander, we don't know him because he's so new. But if we just go with Sarah McBride, what differentiates you from her, and what makes you a better candidate for the position for Congress? And you guys are probably friends, or maybe I don't know, but I'm assuming that you guys
are. We are, yeah. And I think that I'm not sure who the Alexander person is, so I can't really speak to that. But from the perspective of Eugene Young and Sarah, I think between the 3 of us, it's really phenomenal that we have such a diverse slate of candidates here in Delaware, and I think it really speaks to the amazing opportunity to elect someone into this position. So I will say that it's really exciting, and like I said, she is a friend and a colleague, and we've worked together on a couple of items before. And in fact, I was supportive as she was running the first time around, and I knocked on doors for her and things like that, because I certainly was excited for her. That said, it's I grew up in Sussex County. I'm from a large family, but my father's business was subject to fraud, and we experienced our home and all of our possessions being auctioned off. We lost everything. At one point, we didn't have a home, and certainly faced a number of different financial challenges. At the time, and it's still true today, my father has Crohn's disease, and unfortunately, he was unable to get insurance because he had a pre-existing condition. And what that meant was, at different times in his life, he was on the brink of survival, and we would unfortunately rack up medical debt that was just insurmountable. Destroyed my parents' credit. It made it very, very difficult. And, the final, I think, piece to that story is just that when we landed in Delaware when I was a kid, it was a space, an amazing community that welcomed us with open arms. And it was the hard work of my parents, as well as a really inviting community that helped us to rebuild and really change the trajectory of my life. I think that it's really important to be able to say that the people that are representing us in DC are folks that have had a real lived experience. And you know how challenging it is to care for patients. You know, you get a good sense of what people are dealing with on a day-to-day basis because you're part of their lives. And I think that really also speaks to a lived experience that's a bit more broad than the average person in general. And I would just say, you know, as I mentioned before, some of the disaster relief work that I've done, helping developing nations in a variety of different ways, again, means that I'm prepared to really think about some of the things that we do in DC and how it actually impacts people. Because I think that sometimes, you know, we have some really great ideas and really well-intentioned folks making decisions, but you don't always truly understand what it's like to be on a variety of different sides of a situation.
But I know the politics, but you were very, I think you were trying this very politically correct, but you have to still win, right? So this is your friend. I'm trying to kind of see what I would do in those situations if I have to win and if I'm really kind of putting my name on it. So I'm going to go for like full speed. So we may hurt each other in those cases, right? But one of the challenges that I see also is like Sarah McBride has a very big name recognition just because she's the first transgender state officials, if I'm not mistaken. So she's kind of like, she gets a lot of attention from national media as well as the local. I see also like raising money issue where when you have more access outside of Delaware, which in her situation, that may be more advantageous for her. Do you see those as a challenge? And if you do, like, how would you overcome that? Like, I want to kind of see, like, you know, if I have to go between two of you guys, okay, like, I do understand having real life experience, what I picked up from your earlier answer. But, you know, I see, you know, like Sarah saying, like, what she went through was a lot from her point. Would it represent a lot of people? Maybe not. Like what she went through, and maybe what you went through is more, less. That I don't know. But being able to say, okay, here's the punchline that I have to win this. So what would that be?
Sure. I mean, again, I think it kind of comes back to, you know, I'm running for Congress because I've seen far too many people and their families fall through the cracks. And I think that that's true in a variety of different ways, not just, you know, not just my own, but sometimes we're talking about people who are looking for second chances. We're talking about people who have been boxed out of opportunity due to, you know, one reason or another. And I think, I'm prepared to continue to fight for people. I will say that I've certainly overcome some really difficult challenges before, from the time I was a little kid to today. And I will say, you know, funding my college education wasn't something my parents could do. I achieved that on my own. I certainly had no handouts from that perspective. And I'm someone who has worked hard and I'll continue to do that. I would say to a lot of people when I ran in 2018, I had my own friends who said, I don't think you're going to win. And I worked hard. I knocked on doors. I ran up and down the state. And I don't know if you remember this, but I actually dropped into the race late, just before the filing deadline, and was still able to take out an incumbent. So I think that my track record has demonstrated my ability to work hard, and we've already been raising lots of funds myself. But And I'm very, very confident that we'll raise everything we need to have a really good fight.
So with one of the life, I think, challenges, I guess, that we accomplish raising kids. So I don't have any kids. I have a puppy who's a year old, and that's a big challenge for me. I'm glad that he doesn't have to go to school. You raised 3 kids. I think oldest one is a teenager, or you have 2 teenagers and a younger one?
Yes. Yeah, 17, 14, and 7.
God bless you. So I don't know why you did 3 of them, but I'm glad you did it. So how is that huge undertake? And I wasn't kidding earlier. I don't know. I of course I have nephews and nieces and other family, friends, kids that I maybe participate in their life, but just having that responsibility, especially today's world, it's a huge responsibility. How are you handling that? And maybe that's one of the points that you can probably you can make from your candidate standpoint, because that's a huge accomplishment, having 3 kids and then staying in the marriage for so many years, right?
Well, I give a lot of credit to my husband, because he's pretty amazing, and he's really been there. I think that's I don't know who's helping you raise your puppy, but yeah, it often takes a crowd. So yeah, I think that you're absolutely right. I mean, raising 3 kids is definitely something that I consider an accomplishment, and I'm extremely proud of them. And yet, it really kind of draws back to, why is it that anyone would run for office? And it truly is to sort of think about what our next generation is facing, and to really be part of that endeavor to ensure that we continue to have safe spaces for our children, great education, a climate that is not ruined by truly some of our irresponsible endeavors. And I think that there's a lot that we agree upon when it comes to a variety of those different topics. But that's exactly why I think it is helpful to have someone who knows what it means to raise children today. I'm actively doing it. When I ran in 2018, my daughter was potty training, and we were, it was certainly a big part of my life, and being able to run and also participate in this great democracy really was and is a gift. And so they're probably one of the biggest reasons why I would consider running and have decided to step forward.
No, that's an important responsibility, and it's concerning in many ways. Maybe next time we have you back on this, we can go into the details of some of the other issues that I have. I have some concerns, but maybe we'll have that on our next discussion, hopefully. Now, one of the other things, the position, if you are elected, this is not a local state level position. So this is you're going to be one of the representatives of the United States, which does require global understanding and global knowledge. How do you actually see the global issues, especially since the Ukraine, the Tigray? I don't know if you are familiar with what happened in Ethiopia in 2020, 2021 timeframe. Then after that, the Ukraine happened, and there are so many troubles in the world these days. Seems like a little bit more than what it used to be before, or maybe it's just like maybe we are maybe more aware of those things, that we are paying more attention. But I feel like there are too many things are happening, and from the United States standpoint, we are involved in so many of them. Just from the position that the leadership that we have in the world. So how Now, I have to also tell you that in case you didn't know, I was born and raised in Turkey until I was 24. So sometimes it puts me in a really difficult position when I see my country that I was born versus the country that this is my home country here. So I see sometimes on the other sides of the issues, and it's a tough situation. But how do you see the global issues these days? I forgot to mention what's happening in France with the just recent issue that they have. Are you following them very closely?
Yeah, so you mentioned Ethiopia, and what happened in 2020 and 2021 actually has sort of been ongoing for quite some time. And I would say started long before we saw things sort of reach a pinnacle tide in 2020 and 2021. I think that, you know, one of the things that I have done as a treasurer and have been cued into is the way in which money and power are sort of embedded in a lot of these times of turmoil for different nations. And so one of the things that I've tried to do is in our focus on ESG investing, so environmental, social, and governance investing, when you look at it, and I sort of alluded to this earlier, that when you provide economic opportunity and you provide it in a way that allows people some ownership of it, you are then actually promoting more freedom. So for example, what's happening right now that is definitely concerning, and I think people should be aware, is that through the course of the last 3 years, China has been involved in quite a bit of debt, issuing debt to developing nations, particularly in Africa, but not solely in Africa. And their goal, I mean, I don't know because I haven't talked to them, but the appearance of their goal is that they've sort of targeted nations that are rich in particular resources. They strap those nations in debt. As the debt starts to become due, those nations start to falter, have a difficult time repaying that debt because their economy is not bouncing back. They are much more impacted by the inflationary environment that we find ourselves in, which we all call inflationary environment, because we know it's going to be a shorter lived and less drastic experience than it is in developing nations. But it's exactly what is an opportunity for a nation that's trying to become a superpower, and quite frankly has become a superpower. When they call that debt, it means that all those resources will now be potentially on the line. And I it's not to say that developing nations don't know that that's a potential outcome. I think that they kind of go into these things knowing full well, but I can tell you that from boots on the ground, I'm hearing from people in nations like the Democratic Republic of Congo, in nations like Uganda, Kenya, Zimbabwe, that some of the facilities that have been brought in and developed under Chinese companies are not providing economic opportunity to the local people. What they're doing is they're just transplanting others from China and a couple of other nations and providing them training, and they essentially have their factories just set up somewhere else. That's where the United States has a real opportunity.
So, like, China and their investment in Africa is kind of an interesting one, and not everyone probably knows, because like here in the United States, sometimes when you look at the media and what's being planned to us, it's kind of like limited. So that's why I kind of take advantage of my Turkish background, because I have to follow the Turkish news and European news, and I see some of the news like the ones that we don't see here, I see it there. So one of the things that China did with the African Union, they built this African Union building, which cost them about $200 million. They give it as a gift, but then they wired the building so that every night all the computers and everything was downloaded in China. So they actually find that out by coincidence. So, there's always this interest, and that's not always with goodwill. Sometimes the United States does the same thing, but I think China is doing it a little bit under the radar, or it's not getting enough attention in some cases. But it was interesting because when you get a building for 200 million, and if it's free, then you have to question it. So then they were actually getting all of their data, all of their information every night downloaded in the server somewhere in China. So, and there, I think these issues, I'm just worried that some of these issues are going to escalate the way that it's going, because I was hoping this Ukraine issue would never come up. Tigray is horrible. And Dr. Erkan, my bariatric surgeon, who's one of my best friends, he wrote a book. Did I send you a copy? I did, right?
You did send me a copy, and actually Dr. Erkan and I are connected on LinkedIn as well. And I saw when he put it out. Yeah.
I'm glad to hear that. So, and it's just like when you go into the details, it's just you start questioning why this is happening, or what United Nations can do, what the United States can do, all those things. And that's why your position and our interest in your position, who's going to represent us, is important for us. That's Now, Matt, you opened up your campaign, I believe, a couple of weeks ago, and this is the primary that you are going to actually go through first for the governor's race. Now, I know there are a couple other people in the race, and a couple of weeks ago, Colleen Davis, she was my guest, and I asked her this similar question. Now, primaries are kind of interesting, where you have to kind of like compete with your own people from the same party. But at the end of the day, you have to win. How do you plan to balance that? So what do you expect? Who do you expect that's going to be out there on the primaries? And how do you overcome that problem of not maybe crossing the line just because you are going to work with them after the primaries as a Democrat? Either, regardless of who you win or you don't, how do you plan to overcome that issue from your side?
So I guess a little over 6 weeks ago, we did announce that I will be a candidate for governor of the state of Delaware. I'm trying to be the first public school teacher in over a century to run our public school system, be the governor of the state of Delaware. Right now, I'm the only announced candidate. And on my team, we don't sit and speculate about who else is going to run or not run, or whether we'll be the only candidate. What we do is we put our heads down. We make sure we're fundraising. And I encourage everyone don't be shy about going to mattmeyer.org. That's MEYER, 2 T's, mattmeyer.org. Watch our launch video, make a contribution. We think we have a tremendous record of success and an extraordinary vision for the future of this state. And we think as long as we stick to that vision, as long as we talk about the extraordinary things we've done, we've helped bring a Wegmans, very directly helped bring a Wegmans to the state of Delaware. We've taken Hockessin Colored School number 107C, which was a building that was critical to the Brown v. Board of Education decision back in 1954, what some say was the most important court decision in the history of this country. We've preserved that school and turned it into a center for diversity, equity, inclusion. I mentioned we opened the Hope Center, which is something the county government had never imagined doing before. We created a program called 1,000 Kids Coding. We've done all this, and in your tax bills this year, if you live in Newcastle County, your property taxes are actually going down. We decreased property taxes for the first time in over 50 years. For as long as there's been a county executive, there's not been a decrease in property taxes. We're proud of our record of success. We, to answer your question, we think by talking about the issues, by talking about our vision, for the state by talking about the fact we think in many schools and in many classrooms, the level of educational attainment and the quality of education our kids getting and our families are getting is not good. We need to address those problems. And I know there are those before me that have talked about it. We have a record to run on that we talk about something, we assess a problem, and then we get the resources and we go fix it. And we're determined to do that in the educational space. We're determined to do that in healthcare. We're determined to continue doing that with housing.
So when we look at the overall issues in maybe every other state, but especially in Delaware, so the education, economy, corporate social justice, crime, energy and climate crisis, healthcare issues, as you mentioned in the beginning, housing, as we discussed, immigration and infrastructure. So now I've been in Delaware since 1998, although I was not born here. Since I choose to be in Delaware voluntarily, so then I'm hoping that, or I'm assuming that makes me a Delawarean. So
a Delawarean by choice. I think it makes you, in some ways, a higher level of Delaware. You've seen the world. You've seen the world. You've seen, and you choose to be in Delaware.
Right. So like people with my background, so they usually want to be in bigger cities in like New York, Philadelphia, Miami, or they want to be maybe in California. So my brother-in-law, he was doing his master's here between 95 and 97 at University of Delaware. So that was kind of like the choice that I had to make while I was making that there. Like, okay, so why don't you go to Delaware? Like initially it wasn't the ideal place for me, but then I started to love it. And after 25 years, I still do. And I want to invest more and I want to do more for Delaware. And, but one of the, when we go through these, big issues that I mentioned earlier, so I always think that Delaware should be in a better position as a smaller state. We are one of the smallest ones where we can actually better manage our education, our healthcare system. Now, and I just want to tell you this so then, I will be discussing this with other people as well as they come to the show. Last night I was going home. I live in Wilmington. I have two options. I can either go from 141 or I can just go directly from 95. Sometimes now with the construction being done, 95 is faster in some cases. And taking exit 7 is a challenge. We also have a new office right on 600 Delaware Avenue. You probably know that building very well because apparently it was the landmark like last time it was a spa. The one before it was a bar. It was an
I used to get my haircut there. Yeah, it was O'Friel's Bar, right on the corner, right?
Yes, yeah. So we own that building now. Mm-hmm. So we put primary care, and I started having some of my business meetings there. Now we first bought first half. Now we bought the rest. It will be in 4 or 5 months. It will be completed. And our mainly our primary care, our pulmonologists, our bariatricians, nephrologists, a couple other specialties. They will be there. So it's going to be a busy place. So and I will text you the video that I took. So many now I see homeless people at the light. Once you take that exit 7 on the ramp, now at least 3, 4, 5 people homeless and at the same time beggars. So and then I'm like thinking, so my house is about 2 miles from there, but my other office where we invested several millions, it's 2 blocks from that where that thing is. So like I want you to be my patient in that office. So I want like professionals in downtown, they should be comfortably, safely walk and not to worry about what may be happening in that area. So, and it's challenging. And I thought in smaller states like us, this would be more manageable. What do you think we can do to control, which actually this question has several different aspects. So there's the homeless population. I do work with Sunday Breakfast Mission every Thanksgiving and Christmas time.
Thank you for that. Thank you for your contribution.
YWCA is one of our partners. Food Bank is one of our partners. And I think last time I saw you was the opening of Brandywine Valley SPCA. So that was 2 summers ago, if I'm not mistaken. So we were on the groundbreaking.
Yeah.
So um, we have so many different ways of helping on one hand, but on the other hand, I still see some of these things kind of getting out of control. What do you think can be done for Wilmington first, but then also for the state of Delaware, from the homeless standpoint and from the crime crime crisis standpoint?
So in terms of homelessness, first of all, let's understand this is a national trend. If you go to cities around the country are grappling with homelessness, and many cities have homeless encampments within the city that create a wide range of problems, the first of which is often a public safety problem. In Wilmington and in places across the county and the state, there are places with problems of homelessness, with issues of homelessness. I would argue that it's really minor compared to what you see, particularly in other cities and larger places around the country. There are about 600,000 people now that live in Newcastle County, and our homeless problem, given that size population, is really small, given the issues we have. Homelessness at its core is the problem of affordability in housing. And there are serious problems in affordability and housing that need to be addressed if we want to address our homelessness problem in a long-term way. I should also add that I think short-term solutions to homelessness, trying to clear people off the street, trying to take them and forcibly move them to places, almost never work for the long term. They can clear it temporarily when there's the Olympics or something for a week or two or three. But ultimately, if it makes sense for homeless people to be back begging in a certain area, they're going to come back. It's not illegal to be homeless. If someone wants to stand out and beg for money, as long as they're not harassing or doing anything, they often have a right to do so. Our job is to make sure that we're getting out in front of them, offering them services, offering them opportunities that are different from what they have. That's what we've done at the Hope Center. I can tell you, without the Hope Center, without the great work of our affordable housing team, the situation would be much, much worse. We're in the process of investing $31 million. Normally, each year, the county invests $1 to $2 million in rehabbing housing and investing in new affordable housing. We're right now investing $31 million. There was just a $50 million investment yesterday that was announced by the federal government into the Department of Housing and Urban Development into Reach Riverside, building hundreds of affordable homes. I think that contributes to it. But also there's a mental health and substance use aspect that we got to make sure there's sufficient mental health treatment, substance use opportunities for people. Institutions like the Lyman House, as you may know, are absolutely critical to addressing these populations for the homeless and often near homeless individuals. So I think through policies that make sure these organizations and institutions are well funded, we make sure there's a safety net there and there's a temporary emergency place people can go to help them transition with case management to new places in the right direction.
So, I mean, I may disagree with you on this homelessness issue because I think it's also related to the crime rate as well. Because city of Wilmington per capita is one of the worst cities. I think it's
not anymore. It was. But the at least the violent crime rates in Wilmington, which 3, 4, 5 years ago were really among the worst in the country, by some argument, the worst in the world. They've come way down. And so the level of homicides, for example, and other violent crimes are way down, which is much better than what's happening with national trends. And that's also true. It's particularly true in areas of unincorporated Newcastle County outside the city. Now, Kemal, don't get me wrong. I agree. If there's a single incident of any crime, and especially violent crime, in Delaware and Newcastle County in the city of Wilmington, it's of utmost concern. And a single bad incident, as we know, can really be harmful to business, can be harmful to your patients. And so I know that in my supervision of Newcastle County Police, the second largest police department in the state, we take any incident of crime extremely seriously, and we'll continue to do that at the state level.
Now, I will talk about the education a little bit. Again, and I know when I say this, you would trust me on this. It's a choice for me to be here. So I didn't have to migrate here for any other reason other than this was my choice. I didn't run from any country. I didn't left my country. It's just like, this is the country that I choose as home. And it's been, again, 25 years. So everything and anything that I'm actually discussing with you, I want for us to be better, especially for Delaware, because I do believe that Delaware is, there's so many opportunities for Delaware. So, and being in Delaware, and if it's promoted correctly, we can attract more businesses, which would help us to get more employment opportunities for those people out there. But when it comes to education, it's again 25 years. So you probably talked to Sean Donegan, who's actually in the same room with me right now. So he's 25, so his whole life is how much time I spend in this country and in this state. So when it comes to education, we are not doing good. So like we are kind of relying on the public school. Now, I don't have kids. Do you have kids, by the way?
I do not have kids, no.
I don't have kids either. I do have a really nice puppy, which I don't think people should have kids. They should just adopt a lot of puppies. So
do the puppies grow up and do the dishes?
But the kids don't do it. Kids just leave you. So I don't think I have seen any kids who are doing dishes. They're just headache.
Fair enough.
Just kidding. So, but what I was going to say is that from the education standpoint, many of my friends, they say that they cannot send their kids to public school. And like one of the reasons are the real estate taxes are low is because we don't have a really good school system. That's what the rumor is on the street. So what can be done for the school system, for the education system in Delaware that can be better than where we are today?
So there are two problems with our school system right now in Delaware from what I see it. One is a problem of quality, and the other is a problem of equality. With respect to the problem of quality, it's interesting. I agree with you. Most professionals I know in Newcastle County either send their kids to private school, to they move to Pennsylvania and go to public school, pay higher taxes and go to public school, or in some cases are able to send their kids to a higher end charter school, a Wilmington charter, a Newark charter, MOT charter, right? And that's not acceptable. You want every family, you don't want families to have a choice of having to either pay exorbitant private school tuition or leave the state of Delaware to get a quality education. There are extraordinary things going on, Kemal, in Delaware public schools. I had the opportunity to go to China in 2018 on a delegation of elected officials from across the country. I set up a phone call, a video call, like a Skype call. I think we use WeChat to connect Chinese kids going to Beijing International School with Delaware kids going to Downs Elementary. We got on a video call. It was 8 o'clock at night. I was in Beijing. It was 8 o'clock in the morning in Newark at the same time. They got on the video call. The Delaware kids, 4th and 5th graders at Downs Elementary, they were speaking fluent Chinese. The Chinese kids were speaking fluent English. The Delaware kids are in a Chinese immersion program that was created over 10 years ago by Governor Jack Markell, an extraordinary program. The American elected officials who were with me in Beijing in the room, their jaws were dropping. They walked out saying, Delaware has the best public schools. They're like, those are public school. They're like, they couldn't believe it. They were regular Delaware kids, 4th and 5th graders speaking Chinese. Programs like that need to be invested in. Need to be invested in heavily. There are other nuggets of extraordinary things going on across our state's public school system that we need to invest in. We need to also look around the country at best practices, best examples. Let's look at some of our extraordinary school systems, what they do right. For me as a teacher, I can tell you it starts with a school leader, with a principal. I have never in my experience teaching, I have never in my experience in public life seen a great school with a bad principal, nor have I seen a bad school with a great principal. You have to get a great leader, and great teachers will follow. So we're going to look hard at that. I'm not saying the principles we have now are insufficient or substandard. We have to make sure we recruit, retain, and train outstanding individuals, many of which are probably already in our system. So we're going to put in plans in place to do just that. But there's also an equality problem, Kemal. I think there's no way to compare the education that our students are getting in Bancroft and Bayard with the education kids are getting out at North Star, at Charter School of Wilmington, at Friends, Tower Hill, schools like that. We need to work really hard to upgrade the funding, make sure we're doing everything we can to recruit, retain, and train the highest quality teachers and professionals to go into our schools that are showing reading proficiency levels 10, 15, 20%. That's not acceptable in 2023.
And I think it does take time to see the progress, especially in the education where things that you may start today, you may not be able to see the results in the next 8 to 10 years. But I think the right programs, and I agree with you, there has to be more specialized programs. I didn't know the one that you mentioned with the one with the China example, but I'm actually, on one hand, I'm glad that I don't have kids, so I don't have to worry about all these issues. On the other hand, I have at least 500-600 families who rely on me and who rely on us to make things better for the place that we live in, the state that we live in. So if they're not able to afford private schools, many of them can't. So can they safely trust the public system? And that's where we want to see this state. I want to see Delaware in the top 10 of every good metrics. And just one of the things with the obesity, we are number 3 in the youth obesity. And you may already know this, but Dr. Isaiah Erkan from Krias and American.
You interviewed him, right? I think I saw part of the interview. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. He and we do Bariatric Fridays on every Friday at 3 p.m. And we discuss morbid obesity issues. And like looking at the statistics, that always kind of depresses me in a way that, like, why are we like the worst number 3 on the morbid obesity or obesity, like the other stuff? And I think there's so much potential. That's what I was trying to say. And I'm hoping that we can do more things. Now, my next topic for you is healthcare. Now, we are in healthcare. And
I'm listening, Kemal. I'm turning off my video for a minute so I can grab a plug and plug in. Just keep talking. I'm listening. I'm here.
So from our core business standpoint, healthcare is our main focus, and I think it would be probably fair to say that if there is still a private practice in the state of Delaware, that's because of me and United Medical. And if it wasn't us fighting for the last several years, probably the big hospital systems would take over our practices. And we have seen these examples in many of the specialties. For example, in the surgery, at least 4 or 5 different surgical groups join one of the hospital systems. I think it would be fair to say it's Christiana Hospital, just because there wasn't any choices for them. So when we have these issues, one of the problems that I see from the state standpoint, just because we are labeled as for-profit, although we have zero difference. Just an example, if you drive on 95 southbound, you'll see a huge billboard. It says kale hell or kale like the vegetable kale. Yeah,
Christiana Care, right?
Christiana Care. So they spend $6,000 on that this monthly, because I have my billboard right after that. That's how much I pay. $6,000, just it says kale. So, and it's a nonprofit, and using tax dollars money. But us, we have to earn everything, but then we cannot benefit. One of the things that I know you were part of during the pandemic, getting the almost $300 million, right, from the federal government. You were
for Delawareans. Yeah.
And yet, just because we were labeled as for-profit, we actually don't really get either enough credit or enough support. In your leadership, do you see a change of the perspective to for-profit healthcare organizations?
Yeah, great question, Kemal. We have a healthcare crisis in our state, I believe. That's not something I'm making up. That's something I'm hearing from residents. That's something I'm seeing in data. It is a problem with physical and particularly mental health care here in Newcastle County and in Kent and Sussex County in particular. I don't know how much United Medical operates in Kent and Sussex County, but almost do you operate down there?
I have, so I should, normally I do mention those in the beginning, but I forgot to mention that I have about 115,000 patients at the primary care level in the state of Delaware. That's about 14% of the population. Now we have about 22, 23 different specialties, and we have offices from all the way from Bethany Beach all the way up to North Wilmington. Now, there's United Medical Clinics, which are operated and owned by me, and then there are also clients who are part of United Medical ACO. For example, Dr. Jonah Bora. Earlier, I was saying that if there's a private practice still in business in Delaware, I would be the reason for that. But if there's a primary care in Sussex County, she's the reason for that. She's one of our clients, and she has 7, 8 different primary care physicians. And the difficulty is big. So finding providers, hiring them, retaining them, finding support staff is these days, quality support staff is extremely challenging. So, but because we are labeled as private practice, like for example, for my surgery center, American Surgery Center, we have offered our ventilators during the crisis of the pandemic to the hospitals, just so that there are 3 extra ventilators. They didn't take that offer. Now I have these all in writing. And there is this really anti-private practice movement from the big hospital systems. And they get a lot of support. I mean, just an example, even Joe Biden goes and gets his vaccine where CCHS stand is right behind. So this right now you see United Medical. So this is my show, right? But then Joe Biden, that picture is even published in Turkey, and then right behind that is Christiana Hospital. I would be okay if he did it at St. Francis, because, and I don't know how familiar you are with the hospital systems. St. Francis is struggling, and if St. Francis goes down, things could be even worse in the Newcastle County, because even with a small capacity, they do keep certain balance. And
right, competition is good for the consumer.
So with all those, what can we expect from you? So I have about 180 providers, physicians, nurse practitioners, physician assistants, close to, I would say, 750 to 800 staff employees between under the Accountable Care Organization. What kind of support or what kind of changes can we expect from the new leadership?
What you're going to see from the Meyer administration is that we believe there is a crisis of care in Newcastle County, but particularly in Sussex and Kent County, where people cannot get access, particularly to primary care in Newcastle County and in Kent and Sussex County. And in Sussex and Kent County, what I hear is getting a specialist takes months and months and months, usually for basic and sometimes somewhat urgent care. There was individuals, I think it was in Clayton, Delaware, who were telling me a few months ago it was taking them 5 months to schedule an MRI. In this day and age in Delaware, in advanced society, that's not acceptable. So we're going to look broadly at the system to understand how do we get, it's a supply-demand problem. The demand is increasing. Certainly our population is increasing. And so we got to make sure the number of providers is increasing. Some of that, as you mentioned, is a staffing issue. We got to make sure our nursing schools, our high schools through pathways programs, our medical schools, our PA schools are turning out enough individuals. Have already come out very openly that we need a medical school right here in Delaware. I know Sussex County is intent on making sure it's in Sussex County, and I'm certainly open to that. But I think it's true of nursing schools, making sure that you're able to staff your, I mean, my guess is, Kemal, if you were able to open another 3-4 facilities, staffing them would become a huge, huge challenge. And so we got to make sure that we're looking at the whole ecosystem. What's the root cause of some of these problems where my constituents, my bosses are coming to me and saying, it's taking 6 months, 9 months to get basic care. That's not the way it should be in an advanced society. I travel outside the country. Kemal, I know you have obviously spent a significant part of your life there. My guess is if you have money in a place like Turkey or Kenya, where I lived, or even Iraq, you can get an appointment within a week or two. And it's kind of embarrassing when I say I went to Kenya and I actually got faster and more, not necessarily better care, but faster and more efficient care, sometimes less expensive care than I got right here at home in Delaware. So we got to work on that.
So I think, and I want you to kind of really think about this. Not like I'm not expecting an answer right now, but just for our state officials to understand what struggles we have to go through. I mean, 30% of the population we serve is Medicaid right now from my practices. So,
look, Kemal, if you're I think what you're saying to me is that nonprofit, correct me if I'm wrong, nonprofit healthcare providers are getting advantages over for-profit health providers, and it's just not fair. And I generally agree with that premise. I don't understand why nonprofits are given preferential treatment. My guess is some of it might be CMS guidelines or federal law, federal regulation. Insofar as it's within the state, I will do whatever I can to increase the quality and efficiency of care of the people of Delaware. And if that includes changing some of the rules with respect to privately owned facilities versus nonprofits, I'm willing to look at that.